It's been 6 years of podcasting, and without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to bring these podcasts to you. So I want to thank today's sponsors. And first off, we have the Pretentious Pickle Company of 190 Water Street in Plymouth. If you haven't had a chance to get down there, go down and check out what they make. They have everything pickled you can imagine, from pickled beets to carrots to mushrooms to onions to Brussels sprouts and cauliflower. They even have pickled or pickled flavor cotton candy, I should say. They make it fresh there every day, and you can go in there and check out what they have to offer. And if you're not in the Plymouth area, you can go to pretentiouspickle.com and check out what they have to offer there as well, and they will ship it out to you. Their stuff is delicious. You should check it out, and they are big fans of ours, and we are big fans of theirs. So thank you to the Pretentious Pickle Company for sponsoring today's episode. And our second sponsor today is Moonrise Cinemas. Moonrise Cinemas is a new drive-in in Plymouth, right on the Plymouth-Kingston line. They are located at 428 Court Street in Plymouth, Mass. And they offer a great selection of movies. You can go. It's very family-friendly. I went and checked out the Goonies there. They've had Marvel movies, a wide variety of stuff. And they're really starting to expand. They have had the Rocky Horror Picture Show this coming year. They're doing music on Thursday nights. On Wednesdays are going to be 420 friendly events. So make sure you check out what they have to offer. MoonriseCinemas.com. It's a great venue. They have a beer garden. They have their own food. Their food's phenomenal. And they're bringing back their French toast, which I'm very excited about. So make sure you check out what they have to offer, MoonriseCinemas.com. And if you use code Inebri-art when purchasing tickets, you'll get 10% off. So make sure you go to MoonriseCinemas.com to get your tickets for movies, concerts, and more. And use code Inebri-art for 10% off on your purchase. And now let's jump right into the podcast. Welcome back, Inebri-art. This is Andy, as always, from the Inebri-art podcast. And today I am joined by a guest that I stumbled across from another podcast, which I honestly don't even remember what it was, so I feel terrible. But they are on a new show, Our Flag Means Death, which involves Taika Waititi, who's I'm a big fan of. Vico Ortiz, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Andy.
No problem. So let's talk about this show. I don't have HBO Max, but I think I'm going to go out and get it. Because I watched the trailer for this show, and it looks like a What We Do in the Shadows, but a pirate version. And I'm like, oh, this looks so good.
It's a bit of that. It's funny to see what people's reactions to the show is, because it's such a funny, silly, goofy show, but it also has like so much warmth and depth to. I mean, very classic Taika, where there is like a show that's like very silly and funny and goofy, and all of a sudden like you start having conversations about like, oh wait, what is masculinity? What is what makes you be a man? And like what is gender, and all these like questions about like who you are as a human, and he does it so beautifully with the show. And I mean, David Jenkins as well, with at the helm of show running and writing. It's really amazing to see what conversations spark from watching the show. That's also just like so warm and just you're gonna fall in love with everybody, really.
Yeah, and essentially the show is a person going through a midlife crisis, and he decides he's going to become a pirate, and he has no business being a pirate.
Very much so. And honestly, what a perfect context, because I feel like pirates in general were these people who were having a second chance at life. They were either kicked out from society or like were like, F this political structure, I'm gonna make
Hmm.
my own thing, I'm gonna make my own name and reclaim who I am and be accepted for who I am. Of course there was a lot of violence and then intense moments like that, but overall I think the theme that underlines a lot of these characters is that everyone here is getting a second go at assuming like, oh, this is me, and I get to do it the way I want to do it and say F you to society, which
Yeah.
is really dope.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, I think that's why everyone like romanticizes them is they have that kind of, they live life by their rules, and they kind of stick it to the man, which we all live in society, but we don't want, like, we want to, but we don't want to, if that makes any sense.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Some of the questions that I've had in the past week is like, would you be, like, how do you feel about, would you survive as a pirate? And I'm like, well, my ideal right now is like have some land and have a witch coven with my queer friends and like be outside of like society's rules. So like that's kind of like what pirates were doing. I mean, I don't want to pillage or kill people, but like I do want to like live outside. So of what society wants me to do. So yeah, I would do okay.
That's a better answer than me. I'd be like, well, is there Wi-Fi on the ship?
Ah, that's great though. I mean, I'm sure we can get Wi-Fi still in a witch coven or in a pirate ship
Sure.
these
Yeah.
days.
So a witch coven, how does that come about?
I have a lot of witch friends, and I'm a little witchy myself, but I'm not like I wouldn't call myself a witch. But I have a lot of witch friends, and I'm very queer, and there's always this like connection with like nature and spirit and universe and the magic of life and how we were all connected. And
Hmm.
I definitely see this like beautiful idea of like having this tribe in the middle of the woods and just like harvest and and just be with each other and share skills, and sounds like a good time to me.
Yeah, it's fun. It's weird. Like I never connected those two things together, but my daughter is LGBTQ, and she's shopping for a prom dress, so she went to Salem because we're just south of Salem.
I love this.
Um,
I love this
so
for
like
you and for her.
it never registered, but she didn't find one that she found one that she likes, and
Yay.
but and I'm going through the like, oh my god, my daughter's going to prom, like
Yeah.
she's
Wow.
almost an
Teens.
adult, yeah.
Oh.
So, but and I have to say, she's one of the reasons that I reached out to you, being a non-binary person in a creative field and a professional. I'm trying to, as a father, be supportive and understand kind of like her life and her process. She's headed into a creative field herself. And how was the journey for you? Was it a huge struggle? Were people more supportive? Like, it's a weird time because I feel like there's more inclusion in the creative world, but it was such a low bar to get over that I don't feel like it's an actual inclusion. It's like on the surface.
It's still very much on the surface level. We definitely need to like dive deeper and continue to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
But it has been a journey that it's almost been parallel with how the industry has been moving. I interestingly enough had a very similar situation to what happened to my character in Our Flag Means Death,
Okay.
where I, about like 6, 7 years ago, I did this play where I was a genderqueer character who went by he/him pronouns exclusively.
Yeah.
And in that process, I was like, this is feeling really good, and I'm not really sure why, because I still didn't know. I didn't have the vocabulary at the time. I did
Mm-hmm.
have like queer friends, but most of them were cis. So I didn't have any trans or non-binary like close friends. And as I went through the process of this show, I now I know that it was gender euphoria what I was feeling,
Yeah.
because I was able to marry my femininity with my masculinity in the show, and I didn't know it was happening. It was just happening, right?
Yeah.
And and it felt great, but the show finished, and I was like, well, that was done, and it was a character, and it's over. I don't have to think about this ever again. But then the universe works in beautiful ways, and
Yeah.
I began becoming closer to some of my non-binary gender non-conforming friends, and the words they were using to express what they were going through was deeply resonating with what I was feeling, and I was
Mhm.
like, maybe it is me, but now it cannot be me. Because I had already gone through some deep internalized homophobia. Because when I first came out, I was like, just again, the mentality that I had was like, it can't be me. I can have friends, but it can't be me because
Yeah.
not me though. And being an actor, and like I was terrified of the industry like finding out, because I come from a background where like what will they say is like deeply ingrained on myself. So I've had to like unpack a lot of that. Really, at the end of the day, has been just a lot of me unpacking and deprogramming so much of what has been indoctrinated to me since the moment I was born. My parents have been really open, but they've also been in this process with me because societally we've all been affected the same way.
Right.
So as I once I finally accepted me as someone who at the time identified as a lesbian, I was like, okay, I did it, done, one and done. But then as I was starting to question my gender and like who I am, and like resonating with these words and these feelings, I was like, like doing this again, and like I'm just not gonna get any work. I can't. Maybe I can say that I am, but I can't say it like when I go audition, or like I just have to keep pretending that I, you know, am this other person so I can get work. And then when I started listening to myself in this narrative, and I was like, this is so fucked up that I am terrified of being who I am, because I'm afraid of losing work, because I'm afraid of not getting work, because I'm afraid of getting fired. And it's like, this shouldn't be how I live my life. So that's when I was like, fuck all of this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and like be really in your face about it. And because I don't want, anyone to experience this. And it still happens. That's the messed up part, right?
Yeah.
There is this like inclusion, right? There is more diversity. We're seeing more of it on TV, on commercials, on print, but the laws are not matching
Oh
this
no, not at all.
inclusivity at
Yeah.
all. So a lot of people have to hide who they are a good chunk of their lives,
Hmm.
because we are at risk, we are in danger. And I'm hoping that with more of this diversity and inclusion, not only in front but behind the camera, starts affecting these laws, and people can actually go outside and be who they are, and be loved by who they are, and accepted for who they are. Thankfully, on my end, as I was like doing the FU to the industry, I'm gonna just like show up as myself to every single audition, and like show them what they're missing, and what they actually want, versus me
Yeah.
trying to pretend or morph into what I think they want. I started booking more.
Do you think
The
it
wording.
had something to? I'm sorry to interrupt,
Oh
but do
no,
you
go for
think
it.
it
Yeah.
had something to do with kind of feeling more relaxed and being able to focus on the work?
Absolutely, because I was coming from an authentic place.
Yeah.
Before, I was like, it was like me pretending to be someone else, pretending to be someone else. So
Right. Yeah.
I wasn't coming from an authentic place, right?
Right.
I was like playing a stereotype of what a Latin person should look and sound like,
Hmm.
because that's what they want. They wanted a stereotype. So I was pretending to be a stereotype, and then on top of that, playing the stereotype with what they were giving me. So once I was like, F all this, I'm going to go ahead and like bring myself to the table and be like, F your stereotype. I'm going to show up as myself, and show you the many different ways in which a Latin person can exist.
Hmm.
Because that's another thing when it comes to non-binary. Still, the majority of the non-binary representation is white, androgynous, female assigned at birth, where it's like, although I match some of those things, there's so there's thousands, millions of ways to be non-binary, and we're still not seeing a lot of that anywhere, right?
Hmm.
So with me being Latina, being brown, I'm like hoping I can like, get a foot on the door and be like, hey, okay, great, congratulations on getting me, but like there's a bunch of other people that like look
Yeah.
very different and share also very different. I mean, the same way that there are, thousands and millions of ways of being a man, thousands and millions of ways of being a woman, like there are also thousands and millions of ways of being non-binary. So not one experience is the same. And I'm hoping that with this, people start realizing, oh yeah, like, yes, of course there's more. Um, but it has been a journey. Thankfully, on my end with my parents, they have been really open to conversation and dialogue, and it's been really beautiful. But it has been many, many conversations because it's not just unpacking, me, right? It's unpacking everything.
Yeah.
Every single thing that we've been taught since the moment we're born, like the system that affects me and wants to control me is doing
Hmm.
is doing the same thing to everyone, right? Like when I talk to my dad, I like remember when you were born, like you were born and immediately it's like you can't cry, you can't do this, you got to man up. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
That like masculinity can be nurturing and sensible and sweet and tender. It doesn't need to be this like overpowering like energy, right? It's about the balance. And same with my mom. It's like we were born and it's like you got to be gentle and sweet and docile, and it's like you can be a powerful, strong, like woman and like still not one that like overpowering. Again, it's always that balance, right? You can be powerful, you can be strong, you can be gentle and tender and have all those things play on all genders, um
Yeah, it's
and not
kind
just be
of
one thing.
I love what you're saying because it's really about kind of finding out what works for you as an individual. And I remember I sat her down. We were talking. It's not like I didn't have but it occurred to me one day, I'm like, oh, I've always referred to her as her and she, and I've never asked her. And I'm like, is that cool? Like, am I making you upset? And she was kind of like, it doesn't matter. She's like, I'll answer to they, them. She's like, I'll answer to she, her. And she goes, I don't really know what I am. I just know that I'm different. And I'm like, okay, like just trying to like do the right thing. And apparently her pronoun is bro
I
because
love
that's what she
that. Oh
calls
my god.
everybody. Bro. Like my name's Dad, not bro.
Oh, I love
But
that.
yeah,
No,
she's
but I
a
love this conversation for y'all because it gives your daughter this like opening to explore,
mhm.
who she is in this like world and how they want to like uh, explore it and open to it, because oftentimes it's like, oh, I can't say anything and I'll have to figure it out after I'm gone out of the house. And having a safe space in which they can do that, it's like incredible. And that's amazing
Yeah.
because it's a scary
It's
world out there.
it is, and she does feel comfortable talking to me to the point where sometimes I have to be very specific about what I'm asking her because sometimes she'll answer questions that I don't really want to know the answer to. And then it's just
Interesting.
like, oh God, no, that's too personal. I don't need to, no. And she was dating one kid and they broke up and she's like, I hate Paul. I'm like, I hate Paul too. Just don't tell me why. Like, I don't want to know. I will hate him with an
Oh,
undying passion. I just don't want to know.
that's. I mean, the support is much needed. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, and it's maybe it's I went to art school and have always been around creative people, so I feel like LGBTQ people very much gravitate towards the creative fields for whatever reason. So I don't really feel like it was a new thing. It's more just even like I'll go back and I'll watch old TV shows or movies that at the time were very progressive,
Mm.
and and then you go, oof, wow, they're still pretty problematic like when you look at them.
Yeah, a lot
um
of things don't age very well.
do you think things now will have a similar feel in like a 20-year period where we're like, oh wow, I
Absolutely.
can't believe we talked
I
about
would
dogs
be
that way or whatever.
honestly, I would be disappointed if it didn't, I feel like part of the human experience is to constantly, question, and
Hmm.
explore and the same I mean, even with myself, like what I thought 5 years ago is not what I think about now. And I'm sure that the second, 5 years pass, I'll also think something different. And I think part of that, like being queer, is like knowing that there is never an end to this evolution and this exploration of the self. So I feel like collectively as a humanity, if, in 50 years or 10 years, some stuff that we said today isn't like, that didn't age well. um, I don't know. I would want us to constantly be like, doing better each time.
Yeah.
That's the whole purpose of
how
being
does
here.
it shake out? Yeah, for sure. But how does it shake out when you go for roles? Do you feel it is more because there's a lot of pressure for studios and whatnot to cast non-binary people with non-binary actors, but does it allow you to take gender specific roles that maybe you wouldn't be able to before, or like,
I honestly,
curious.
I had this chat, and I want to play like non-binary characters. Like I want to, and if they give me a cisgender character, I'm gonna be like, let's make it non-binary. Why not?
Yeah.
Because it really is that. 'Cause it comes down to like, still the industry is like, oh, you're playing non-binary, and it's like, no, I am non-binary.
Yeah.
And I'm just playing this character, right? So I mean, a lot of my earlier roles were written for cisgender men, and I just just show up and be like, I'm gonna just make it non-binary, and then here we are. I mean, there were like little co-stars. I actually said that to a friend of mine recently, be like, are you going out for only like non-binary roles, or are you going for cis roles as well? And they were like, no, only non-binary. I'm like, go for the cis men roles. Just make them non-binary. Like, you can be a barista, you can be a
Yeah.
secretary, only for these like co-star, like, under 5 roles. I mean, obviously that you want to get more and more. I get more guest stars, more series regulars, but to get the ball rolling, it's like, show the industry that like we exist everywhere.
Right.
It doesn't need to be about being non-binary. We are, and we just exist. So I think that, I mean, I want to play non-binary because I feel like why wouldn't I? I can just be in whatever position, whatever place on earth, and just be a non-binary person existing. And ideally, I would like for me now, it's like, I know that a lot of the roles that I'm taking, it's like there is the subject of like, oh, this person is non-binary. Let's talk about it a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do want it to eventually be like, oh, I just am, and then it doesn't really ever like, it gets mentioned, but it's not about that, right?
Right.
Which also kind of happens with our flag, right? Like we are touching base on the fact that my character is non-binary, but it's like we accept it, we move on, and then they have other things to do that are badass and cool and like fantastic. Moving on, which is really rad. But yeah, I definitely. I mean, yeah, if they give me a cis role, I'm gonna be like, I mean, that could be non-binary.
But no,
Yeah.
it's that's really kind of like the best roles. And you made me think of there's a cartoon called Venture Brothers.
I have not seen this.
It's weird. There's like, it's been out for like, I don't know, 15 years, and there's maybe 4 seasons of it because they're just so slow on getting seasons out. But it's very much of a spoof on like 1980s cartoons. And so like all like the G.I. Joes are there, and like all these different, and there's one character, his name is Shore Leave, and he's take off on like their G.I. Joe characters were very much the village people.
I love.
And so he was the sailor, and he was gay, but like it's such a side note to his character that it's more important that he's like this super trained killer like soldier, and the fact that he's gay is just, it's
Yes.
there, but it's like, whatever, that's not the important part.
Yep, that exactly is what I would like it for it to be for everyone.
And it's really the way it should be, because I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, what difference it makes? Just people.
Yeah. And it helps a lot of how society like sees us eventually, right? Because I feel like when we always see the stories revolve around the issue and the
Mhm.
identity and like how everything is a problem with who they are, then everyone is absorbing that unconsciously. But when you see them existing, it's like, oh yeah, I guess like they're just as normal as everyone else. Normal, what is normal? They're just as human as everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so because you were even necessarily not knowing it, you were kind of trying to act towards the social norms. Do you think that kind of drove you to acting in general?
So, fun fact, both my parents are actors.
Oh,
My
okay.
parents, I was born and raised in a theater,
So you had
essentially.
no choice.
No choice at all. That was the one thing.
Were you going to rebel and be a
uh,
doctor at one point?
my gosh,
I'll
I
show
that
you.
you imagine. I mean, I have a friend. Both her and her husband are like performers and comedians, and their kid loves science and math, and they're like, "What is happening?" Um, but no, on my end, I mean, like the acting bug bit me right in the womb. It was like I came out a performer.
Yeah.
I have so many stories of me as a kid that I don't completely remember, but apparently I just was constantly on performance mode 24/7. And it just made sense to me. I did want to do more TV and film, which is why I moved to LA.
Mhm.
Um, but what's fascinating, and this is something that I've talked with my parents about, is that when I was in high school, right? Obviously, you're on all these like plays and all these things and projects, and there's this character in Spanish history called Saltimbanqui, which is kind of similar to what a Harlequin in like Commedia dell'arte would be,
Okay.
who, normally is portrayed by a man, but it's kind of this like being that just kind of fairy floats, like
Yeah.
very whimsical, very um flamboyant, very big, and as I've talked to my parents about, and or like puckish energy,
Mhm.
which is, there's like a meme going around now with like, your gender isn't a sign at birth, your gender is a sign in your English teacher's reading of Shakespeare. Because it
Okay.
really, a lot of my NB friends are like, yeah, I got cast as Puck. Everyone is like, yeah, when you're just non-binary, you're like, you're Puck. Like this is the vibe. But I also, you naturally gravitate to these like characters that are just like, you know, out of what is expected.
Because they have
And
to be, you have to feel some sort of connection to them, kind of like, oh, I can relate to them, which, yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And people can see it too, which is funny because like as I've talked to my parents about it, they're like, yeah, now that we have the language, like we can look back and like, you've always been like this. If
Hmm.
anything, it was weird when you were trying to act what how society wanted you to act. Because I did have a moment in time where I realized, ooh, like me being like this is not, I don't think it's accepted. So I gotta shift gears and like perform womanhood the way society wants me to perform womanhood, specifically a Latina woman, right?
Hmm.
So there was a couple of years in my life where I I shift gears and I performed it like a violin, and then and then I was like, this is awful. I don't like this. But yeah, it's interesting to have these convos with my parents and them looking back and being like, yeah, you're just going back to what you were as a kid. Like you've always been like this. And it's really beautiful to see them realize like, yeah, now we have the language, now we understand. Like, yeah, you've always been this like saltimbanqui, this puckish, this fairy, like
Hmm.
magical being. And then you're just going back to it versus, trying to align to what I was supposed to do.
I love that kind of like getting back to childhood. I mean, I feel like my internal self has not really changed since I was 16, 17. Like it's still, I still feel like that person.
Yes, I love that.
And it's, there's a book, um it's called Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten.
Ooh.
And the author says something along the lines of, if you go into a kindergarten, you can say who can dance, who can sing, who can draw, like everyone's hand is up. He's like, and if you go into 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, there's fewer and fewer and fewer hands that go up. And
Mm.
it made me realize that having that childlike thought that you can do it. I mean, everybody can draw just at different levels. Everybody can sing just at different levels.
Mhm.
So I love that idea of kind of like getting back to that point where you feel like, oh yeah, I can sing. I mean, I'm not David Bowie, but I can sing, I sing in the car,
Absolutely.
and like, why shouldn't I? It's fun. And
Yeah. Oh, I
it's
love this.
society's so like, well, you're not doing it good enough. I'm like, I'm not. So we host drawing events, and people will come in, they'll be like, oh, I'm not very good. I'm like, it's not about being good. It's like, are you having fun? Do you think you're
Mhm.
learning something? Are you improving who you are and letting off some steam? That's what's important. Like, we don't have an art show at the end and ridicule you for not drawing four fingers instead of five, whatever.
Ah,
But
I love that. I need to read this book because it really is, it really comes down to that. I mean, there are so many things that we learn immediately the second that we're like out of the womb.
yeah,
And it's that, like you start getting all this like feedback and you begin like with all these possibilities and so much confidence in yourself and like, yeah, the world is my oyster, like, yeah, let's go. And then you start getting that feedback. Oh, you're not good
yeah,
enough, or you can't do this because of that, or you shouldn't be doing that, or you should. And it's like you start being afraid of being yourself,
yeah.
period.
Well, it's like
Um,
adults be like, you can be anything you want to be. Oh, you can't wear pink. You're a boy, and you're like, wait, I thought I could be what I wanted to be.
exactly. Or like, you can't wear makeup. That's not manly. And it's like,
Yeah,
excuse me. What is that? It truly, yeah. I mean, it all comes down to those very early years and unpacking a lot of that and reclaiming that. I feel like that's where I'm at now, reclaiming a lot of the things that I was so afraid of doing.
so here's the really tough question, though. I feel like I am who I am because the struggles I've been through.
Mm,
If you didn't have those struggles, if things were more accepted and you were, able to just walk out and be who you wanted to be, do you think you'd be in the same spot? Or do you think the struggle is part of what brought you to where you are? Because being an actor has
really?
got to be a big struggle.
Oh, yeah. I mean, being an actor on its own is is a whole nother thing to unpack. Goodness gracious, that one's a fun that one's a fun and devastating journey of constantly putting your heart out there and getting it stabbed and stomped and then putting it back in your chest and heal it a little bit and then
Yeah.
put it out there again. And it's
Be
like,
like, am I good enough now?
whew,
No.
goodness
All
gracious. A
right.
lot of nurture, a lot of nurture.
Yeah.
I mean, people see always like oh, they booked this, they booked that. Like they're always, but they don't see like all of the rejections that I
Hmm.
have gone through like over and over again, um, which are like, it's a lot of like looking at yourself in the mirror and be like, you got this, buddy. You are beautiful. You're worthy. You're talented. Let's go. But yeah, I feel that if I hadn't, I mean, I would just be a different person, Obviously,
Yeah.
like, I definitely agree with you that, like, whatever happens in your life is what makes you who you are today. And if I didn't have the same struggles or victories that I've had thus far, I definitely would be a different person. Honestly, probably less therapy.
Yeah,
Um, you know,
but
uh,
everyone should go into therapy. I feel
but
like
I
not
do
enough
think,
people are in
yeah.
it.
Gosh, yeah, I feel like after the halfway through the pandemic, I was like, yeah, I should treat my mental health just as seriously as like I treat other things. So let's just, hop on this. And wow, did I realize so many things that I needed to unpack outside of uh gender and sexuality, just as a human being, period,
Yeah.
um living in this world that wants to squeeze the juice out of you and
And through a pandemic, I mean,
mhm,
I know a lot of people, including myself, if they weren't already in therapy, went back, just to kind of,
very much.
you know,
Whew.
a tune up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm like a big like, oh yeah, I see them every week and I'm like a happy camper. I'm like, thank you very much. It's always good to process the week and have that person there in your corner. But yeah, I feel like I mean, I'm happy for the struggles that I have now. I mean, even though a lot of them have sucked, and I will be dealing with them for the rest of my life. And I think part of the journey of being a human in this dimension is to carry both love and grief, and constantly be in a process of healing until it's done, right?
Hmm.
Until this phase is over. Um, and and that's the beauty of it, right? I feel like I still have to let go of this, like, I need to be perfect, mentality. And that's one of the things that
Oh,
I'm
let me
working
know
on
if you figure
therapy.
that
So,
out.
still not
Yeah.
there. Still
Nah,
very
I
much
don't, I
not
don't know
there.
if I'll ever get there,
Whew, yeah.
But your struggles have got you on our flag means death. And I mean, it looks so great. It was it as fun to make as it looks to watch, and like
It
what was your
was
experience like on the set?
it was an absolute blast, dream come true. I mean, everything about that show and about the character specifically, me being from the Caribbean, right?
Hmm.
Pirates, Latine, non-binary. I had a background on fencing. I actually was part of a fencing team in Puerto Rico, and I, have skills with sword fighting.
It's like they
And
made
my
the show
character,
for you.
it was insane. I mean, I had so many people be like, still people are like, did they write this for you? And I'm like, no, I had to
No.
audition. I had the callback. I had the meeting. I had the whole thing to like get to this thing. But it felt so, um, it just felt so natural. Maybe like my pirate ancestors are like, hey, what's up? We're here for you,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's gonna be one or two in my bloodline. But yeah, I mean, it was so much fun. I truly my cheeks were like hurting every day from laughing.
Yeah.
And I think honestly the hardest part was to not break in every single scene because everyone was just like bringing their A game every single day, both in front or when we were not filming. I immediately felt so safe, which was like a big one for me because I knew I
Hmm.
was going to be in this for a very long time and I was going to be around a lot of men, cis men specifically. And I was like, okay, here we go. But honestly, like every single one of them was so sweet and welcoming and we dove into some beautiful conversations right on the get-go. They really just opened their hearts to me and it was so beautiful to be in that space and be taken care of in that way. And I feel like in a way you also feel that on the screen because it really is you'll feel taken care of by every single one of us in the show. And it really was such a joy. I mean, going like getting on the ship and looking around, I was like, I can't believe this is happening. I'm doing this? What? And I've watched the show and I'm like, that's me. How is that? Did I just had a fever dream? Like it's still what is happening?
Yeah. I love that. And it's I don't know if I'll ever get used to that kind of feeling. And I don't know if I want to, but with like the podcast and shooting our YouTube shows, and we're headed out to Vegas to record one of our shows in a couple
Yes.
weeks. And I always turn to my business partner and be like, this is our job, right? Like, this is what we do for a living. And it's so surreal because most of the time it's like hanging out with my friends, doing something silly, watch
Yes.
them make me laugh, and then I put it up on the internet. And it makes no sense really.
Truly. And it also makes all of the sense because of
Yeah.
course, like what you love. I mean, talking about capitalism, right? You should be able to just do what you love and not worry about like all of the things you got to pay. But it's so nice to know that you can like do what you love and be able to do life and work in what you love to do and have joy in that. And that's so nice. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I love when people get to that point. And my son's still trying to figure out what that is. Like, my daughter's pretty much zeroed in on what she wants to do. And I am always telling him, like, if you think you want to do something, try it, give it a try, give it an honest try. If
Hmm.
it's hard right away, don't give up. But if you don't like it, you're at the age where you got plenty of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, like if there's a career change that's, 10, 15 years down the line, go for it, like whatever um tickles you and it makes you happy and brings you joy when you do it. Um, but yeah, definitely. Things will be hard in the beginning, so I think for
Yeah,
most
I mean
things. So
they're hard in the middle too, but like
mhm.
it's just it's part of life. No matter what you do, there's some aspect that's going to be hard. Whether it's doing a job that you hate is really difficult, and even if the job is easy. So
Very much so.
but so where can our listeners go to find out more about you and the show online and all the promotional
All
stuff?
of that promo stuff.
Yeah.
I am on the Instagram as Puerto Rican Ninja, and the N for Ninja and for Puerto Rican is the same, so just the one N in between.
Okay.
And then I'm on Twitter now. I used to say that I'm not on Twitter, but I am. But now I actually am on Twitter, and I'm posting almost every day, which is weird.
Why did you choose to go to Twitter?
'Cause euphoria.
No, it's weird. Like the past 8 years, I just feel like, Twitter's and who knows? I always say if you see nothing but negativity on your social medias, it's the algorithm telling you who you really are.
No, Twitter is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, it's so
Pretty
bad
intense.
sometimes,
I
but I don't
only
spend a lot of
really
time on
go.
it.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
only go to just like post like promo stuff and then just like duck out.
Yep, that's exactly what I do. Yeah, yeah.
Because it really, yeah, the second I open it, it's like bombarding with like things, and I'm like, I am overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's V_Vico_Ortiz. And then on TikTok, I'm there just as frequently as I am on Instagram, and that's Vico_Ortiz. But yeah, again, Twitter, it's like optional.
Yeah.
I'm really just like reposting what I post on TikTok and Instagram, so you can really just choose one of them. I'm
Yeah.
not going too special on Twitter because yeah.
TikTok, I'm starting to come around on. So many people have been like, "Oh, you got to get on there to promote the podcast," blah blah. And so I went and got the Inebri-art account because I didn't want to not have the account, and then I just never used it because I'm like, it just makes me feel super old.
I mean,
I don't get it, and
me neither. Honestly, it is a journey.
Yeah, it's weird, but then there's things that I'm finding on there that I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty brilliant. I've
learned so much on TikTok. Honestly, I've learned so much. Really, I'm so excited about this new generation that's coming up, and how open they are about so many things that we have been so tabooed with. I love it, and I am really grateful for them. So yeah, I found myself now more like going through the videos versus like making them. In the pandemic, I went on a process where I was like posting 5 to 6 videos a day.
Yeah.
Now I just don't have the capacity for it, but it's a great app. I'm a fan of it.
I like it because I feel like it picks up on what you want to see pretty quickly. And I really like some of the people who are entertaining it's a very short amount of time to be as entertaining as they can. And I'm sure we shouted him out before, but there's a gentleman by the name Dylan Hollis.
I don't think that hasn't crossed my algorithm yet, but I'm sure after we had this, it'll show up.
yeah. I'm sure your phone's listening.
Yeah.
But he gets like vintage cookbooks from like the 1920s and depression, and then he'll make the recipes, and it's like sauerkraut chocolate cake or water pie, and
what?
So like he'll make these like bizarre. One was an appleless apple pie using Ritz crackers.
What?
And he's really funny, but it's also, I think the funniest parts are like when he makes a recipe that sounds horrible, and then at the end he's like, how this shouldn't work, why is this working? And you should definitely check it out.
Fascinated. Wait a minute, I think I have seen this person. Is he Italian?
No, he's very Caucasian. He's very thin and like pasty white, and he's kind of got like a 1950s kind of like flute in his hair.
Then it's not the same person because
Yeah.
I think this person, I think the one that I've seen the videos is one that like goes to like thrift stores and like grabs an old machine
Hmm.
and then uses it to make recipes. But fun stuff. Okay, great.
Awesome. I want to say thank you for taking the time to talk to us. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me.
No
Same,
problem.
yes.
And best of luck. I hope you have many seasons of this show. And I'm definitely, like I said, I watched the trailer and I'm like, damn, I'm gonna have to go out and get yet another streaming service just so I can watch this.
HBO is worth it. HBO Max is worth it.
Yeah,
I've found myself really enjoying a lot of the content they're putting out. So yeah.
I just finished watching Peacemaker because a buddy of mine, like, we'd get together like every couple weeks and like watch a bunch of episodes. So
Oh, I
maybe we'll
love
start doing
that.
that with our Flag Means Death. So yeah.
Yes.
So
Thank
if our
you.
listeners are out there, go binge watch the show. And yeah, thanks for coming on, man. It's great.
Thank you. Cheers.
And our listeners, we'll catch you guys again next week. And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at inebriart.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at inebriart.com. So thanks again for listening.